Implementation of Demokraatit Party's business-focused reforms by Q2 2025. Overview of legislative phases and budget allocation. Introduction. In March 2025, the Demokraatit Party in Greenland announced its ambitious plan to implement a series of business-focused reforms aimed at stimulating economic independence and growth by the second quarter of 2025. The initiative, backed by a substantial budget allocation of $1.2 billion, is positioned as a pivotal step in the party's broader vision for a self-sufficient and economically robust Greenland. This report outlines the key phases of the legislative process, the motivations behind the reforms, and the potential implications for Greenland's political and economic landscape. Background. The Demokraatit Party, which secured nearly 30% of the vote in the recent parliamentary elections, significantly increased its representation in the Inatsisartut Greenland's parliament from 3 to 10 seats. This electoral success reflects a growing appetite among the Greenlandic population for a market-based economy and a gradual transition away from the historical governance of Denmark. The party's leader Jens Frederik Nielsen emphasized the need for reforms that would not only foster economic growth but also ensure that living standards are preserved during the transition. Greenland's current socio-economic framework heavily relies on Danish financial support, which significantly contributes to the local economy. However, the Demokraatit Party argues that a shift towards independence is essential for tapping into the island's vast natural resources, particularly rare earth minerals, which are in high demand internationally. This initiative comes at a time when geopolitical interest in Greenland is intensifying, particularly from the United States, as global warming makes the region's resources more accessible. Key legislative phases. 1. Drafting and proposal of legislation Q1 2025. The first phase of the reform process involves the drafting of legislation that aligns with the business interests of local stakeholders and addresses the economic challenges faced by Greenland. This phase is critical as it sets the foundation for the reforms. The Demokraatit Party plans to engage with business leaders, indigenous representatives, and community organizations to ensure that the proposed measures reflect a broad consensus. 2. Public consultations Q1 2025. Following the drafting of the initial proposals, the party will conduct public consultations. These sessions are designed to gather feedback from various stakeholders, including local businesses, indigenous communities, and civil society organizations. The goal is to refine the proposals based on the insights and concerns of those directly affected by the reforms. This phase is essential for building trust and ensuring that the reforms are inclusive and equitable. 3. Debate and amendment in Parliament Q2 2025. Once the public consultations are complete, the proposed legislation will be introduced in the Greenlandic Parliament. This phase will involve rigorous debate among parliamentarians, allowing for amendments and revisions based on the discussions. The Demokraatit Party anticipates opposition from other political factions that may advocate for a more cautious approach to independence, particularly those concerned about potential impacts on social welfare programs. 4. Approval and integration into legal framework Q2 2025. The final phase involves the formal approval of the legislation and its integration into Greenland's existing legal framework. This step will mark the culmination of the reform initiative and is expected to be accompanied by significant public discourse regarding its implications for Greenland's future. Budget allocation and strategic focus. The $1.2 billion budget allocation is strategically designed to bolster infrastructure development, attract investment in key sectors such as mining and fisheries, and create a conducive business environment. This funding is aimed at addressing the economic challenges that Greenland faces, including high unemployment rates and reliance on Danish subsidies. Key areas of focus for the investment include infrastructure development, enhancing transportation networks and telecommunications to support business operations and improve access to resources. mining and resource management, investing in sustainable mining practices and developing regulatory frameworks that can attract foreign investment while ensuring environmental protection. Fisheries management, supporting the local fishing industry, which is crucial for Greenland's economy by promoting sustainable practices and expanding access to global markets. Political landscape and opposition. Despite the Demokraatit Party's ambitious plans, there is significant political discourse surrounding the reforms. Opposition parties, including the left-leaning Nalarak and Inuit Ataqatigiit, advocate for a more cautious approach to independence. They express concerns about the potential economic ramifications of a rapid transition and emphasize the importance of maintaining social welfare programs that support the population's living standards. The ongoing debate over resource management and independence is further complicated by renewed U.S. interest in Greenland. The previous administration under Donald Trump had hinted at economic investment in exchange for strategic partnerships, raising questions about the implications of foreign involvement in Greenland's quest for autonomy. Conclusion. The Demokraatit Party's commitment to implementing business-focused reforms represents a significant turning point in Greenland's political and economic trajectory. As the legislative process unfolds in the coming months, the party will need to navigate the complexities of governance, stakeholder interests, and the broader geopolitical landscape. The success of these reforms will hinge on the ability to balance economic aspirations with social welfare considerations, ensuring that the transition towards greater independence is both sustainable and beneficial for all Greenlanders. The content presents various counterintuitive information regarding Greenland's political and economic situation, particularly in relation to the Demokraatit Party's reforms and the geopolitical interests surrounding the region. Here are some key points highlighting counterintuitive aspects. 1. Economic independence versus dependency. While the Demokraatit Party advocates for a gradual transition to independence from Denmark, which is perceived as a move towards economic autonomy, there is a significant risk that this independence could lead to economic instability. Many voters express a desire for independence but simultaneously fear that a hasty transition could jeopardize their living standards, which are currently supported by Danish subsidies. This creates a paradox where the push for independence, often associated with freedom and prosperity, may lead to economic decline and increased vulnerability. 2. U.S. interest as a double-edged sword. The renewed interest from the U.S., particularly during the Trump administration, presents an opportunity for Greenland to leverage its strategic resources and potentially gain economic benefits. However, this interest is fraught with concerns over sovereignty and the implications of foreign influence on domestic policies. The notion that U.S. investment could be a path to independence contradicts the very essence of self-governance, raising questions about whether such partnerships would truly enhance Greenland's autonomy or simply replace one dependency with another. 3. Political fragmentation and unity. The electoral success of the Demokraatit Party, which emphasizes business-friendly reforms, contrasts sharply with the more cautious approaches advocated by other parties like Nalarak and Inuit Ataqatigiit. This fragmentation in political ideology suggests that while there is a desire for a unified national identity and autonomy, the means by which to achieve this, through rapid independence or gradual reform, creates division. The counterintuitive element lies in the fact that a call for unity through independence can simultaneously breed significant political discord. 4. Environmental concerns versus economic exploitation. The discussions surrounding the exploitation of Greenland's natural resources, including rare earth minerals, showcase a conflict between environmental stewardship and economic opportunity. While the Demokraatit Party seeks to promote investment in these sectors for economic growth, there is widespread concern among the populace about the environmental impact and long-term sustainability. The tension between the urgent need for economic development and the equally pressing need to protect the environment presents a counterintuitive situation where the very resources that could fuel economic prosperity may also lead to ecological degradation. 5. Independence as a geopolitical tool. the idea that independence could be used as leverage in international negotiations, particularly with the US, presents a counterintuitive angle. Many Greenlanders see independence as a way to assert their rights and interests on the global stage. However, the reliance on foreign powers for support and investment complicates this narrative. It raises the question of whether true independence can be achieved when external influences remain a significant factor in the political landscape. 6. Cultural identity versus economic pragmatism. There is a growing pride in Inuit culture and identity among the indigenous population, which is increasingly intertwined with the independence movement. However, the emphasis on cultural preservation often clashes with the economic pragmatism required to engage with global markets and attract foreign investment. This creates a counterintuitive scenario where the push for cultural identity and preservation could potentially hinder the economic growth necessary to sustain that very identity. In summary, the content reveals a complex interplay of aspirations and realities in Greenland's quest for independence and economic reform. The counterintuitive elements highlight the inherent contradictions and challenges faced by Greenlanders as they navigate their political future amidst global interests and local concerns. The report on the Demokraatit Party's business-focused reforms in Greenland highlights several critical aspects that may be overlooked by many readers, yet hold significant implications for both local governance and international relations. 1. Gradual transition to independence. One of the most significant yet potentially overlooked elements is the emphasis on a gradual transition to independence from Denmark. The Demokraatit Party advocates for a careful approach to ensure that living standards are not compromised. This is crucial because the economic stability of Greenland is heavily reliant on Danish financial support, which accounts for approximately half of its state budget. The concerns raised by opposition parties regarding the potential decline in living standards during this transition underscore the delicate balance that must be maintained. Ignoring this aspect could lead to a misunderstanding of the socio-economic challenges that could arise, especially if independence is pursued too hastily without adequate planning. 2. Public consultations and stakeholder engagement. The second phase of the legislative process involves public consultations to gather feedback from various stakeholders, including local businesses and indigenous communities. This underscores a significant shift towards participatory governance, which is often overlooked in discussions about political reforms. Engaging local communities in the decision-making process is vital for ensuring that the reforms are aligned with the needs and aspirations of the people. This participatory approach can enhance the legitimacy of the reforms and foster a sense of ownership among the stakeholders, which is essential for the long-term success of any policy implementation. Failure to recognize the importance of this phase could lead to resistance and backlash from communities that feel excluded from the process. 3. Resource management and economic diversification. The report mentions the strategic focus on leveraging Greenland's rich natural resources, particularly rare earth minerals, in sectors like mining and fisheries. However, what may be overlooked is the potential environmental impact of such exploitation and the need for sustainable management practices. The increasing global demand for these resources, coupled with geopolitical interests, particularly from the US, raises questions about how these resources will be managed. The significance lies in the fact that while economic growth is vital, it should not come at the expense of environmental degradation or the rights of indigenous peoples. This tension between resource exploitation and environmental stewardship is crucial for shaping Greenland's future and must be carefully navigated to avoid long-term ecological consequences. 4. Geopolitical context and US interests. The renewed interest from the United States in Greenland, particularly under the Trump administration, adds a complex layer to the reforms. The potential for U.S. economic investment in exchange for strategic partnerships could influence Greenland's trajectory towards independence. This geopolitical context is essential to understanding the broader implications of the reforms. The possibility of forming defense agreements with the US or seeking a free association status could significantly alter Greenland's foreign relations and economic landscape. Moreover, the historical exploitation of Greenland's resources by foreign powers raises ethical considerations that must be addressed to ensure that such partnerships do not replicate past injustices. Ignoring this geopolitical dimension could lead to an oversimplified view of Greenland's path to independence and the international implications of its resource management strategies. 5. Opposition perspectives. The report briefly mentions the concerns raised by opposition parties such as Nalarak and Inuit Ataqatigiit regarding the potential socio-economic impacts of a swift transition to independence. These concerns are significant as they highlight the divergent views on governance and economic policy within Greenland. The debate between rapid independence versus a more cautious approach reflects broader ideological divides regarding how to balance economic growth with social welfare. Understanding these perspectives is critical for comprehensively analyzing the political landscape in Greenland and the potential challenges the Demokraatit Party may face in implementing its reforms. Dismissing these viewpoints could lead to a lack of preparedness for potential political pushback and social unrest. Conclusion. In summary, the report on the Demokraatit Party's business-focused reforms in Greenland reveals critical content that warrants closer examination. The gradual transition to independence, public consultations, resource management, geopolitical context, and opposition perspectives are all significant factors that shape the political and economic landscape of Greenland. Recognizing and addressing these complexities is essential for understanding the potential success or failure of the reforms and their wider implications for Greenland's future. Here are the 4 most valuable points from the provided content regarding the Demokraatit Party's business-focused reforms in Greenland. 1. Legislative framework and implementation phases. The plan to implement business-focused reforms involves a structured legislative process divided into 4 distinct phases. These phases are crucial for the successful rollout of reforms aimed at enhancing Greenland's economic independence. The first phase focuses on drafting and proposing legislation that aligns with business interests, indicating a strong pro-business stance. The subsequent phases involve public consultations, parliamentary introduction, and eventual formal approval. This systematic approach ensures that diverse stakeholder inputs, including those from local businesses and indigenous communities, are considered, thereby promoting inclusivity in governance. This framework can be analyzed further to understand its implications on both legislative effectiveness and stakeholder engagement in the context of Greenland's unique socio-political landscape. 2. Economic independence and resource management. A central theme of the Demokraatit Party's agenda is the pursuit of economic independence from Denmark, facilitated through strategic resource management. The party aims to leverage Greenland's rich natural resources such as rare earth minerals and fisheries, which are essential for modern high-tech industries. The $1.2 billion budget allocation is targeted at enhancing infrastructure and creating a favorable business environment that can attract investments. This focus on resource management raises important questions about balancing economic growth with environmental sustainability and the rights of indigenous populations. An in-depth discussion could explore how these reforms might impact Greenland's long-term economic stability and environmental integrity. 3. Political opposition and social welfare concerns. The ambitious reform agenda faces significant opposition from other political factions, notably the left-leaning Nalarak and Inuit Ataqatigiit parties. These parties advocate for a more cautious approach to independence, emphasizing the importance of social welfare programs. They express concerns that a rapid transition to independence could lead to a decline in living standards, particularly among vulnerable populations. An analysis of this political dynamic reveals the tensions between economic aspirations and social equity, which is a critical consideration in any reform process. Understanding these opposing viewpoints can provide insights into the broader implications of governance in Greenland, especially in terms of public support and policy legitimacy. 4. Geopolitical context and global interest. The geopolitical landscape surrounding Greenland has intensified, particularly with renewed interest from the United States. The implications of U.S. foreign policy, especially under the Trump administration, highlight the strategic importance of Greenland in the Arctic region. This external interest complicates the discourse on independence and resource management as it intertwines with global power dynamics and local aspirations. An in-depth exploration of how global geopolitical interests influence domestic policy decisions in Greenland could provide valuable insights into the intersection of local governance and international relations. This aspect underscores the need for careful navigation of local aspirations alongside external pressures, which could shape the future trajectory of Greenland's development. Conclusion. These 4 points encapsulate the multifaceted challenges and opportunities presented by the Demokraatit Party's reforms in Greenland. They underscore the need for a balanced approach that considers economic aspirations, stakeholder engagement, social welfare, and geopolitical dynamics. An in-depth analysis of these elements is essential for understanding the potential outcomes of the proposed reforms and their broader implications for Greenland's future. Here are 3 famous historical cases that exhibit a similar theme of political reform: independence movements or economic transitions akin to the context of the Demokraatit Party's implementation of business-focused reforms in Greenland. 1. The Czech Republic's Velvet Revolution 1989. The Velvet Revolution was a non-violent transition of power in what was then Czechoslovakia, leading to the end of 41 years of communist rule. The movement was characterized by mass protests and public demonstrations, spearheaded by various civic groups and dissidents, including the playwright Václav Havel. Following the revolution, the country underwent significant political reforms to establish a democratic government. The transition included a focus on economic reforms to shift from a centrally planned economy to a market-oriented one. This period is marked by the adoption of free market principles, privatization of state-owned enterprises, and integration into European structures, which parallels Greenland's ambition for economic independence and business-focused reforms under the Demokraatit Party. 2. India's economic liberalization 1991. In 1991, India faced a severe balance of payments crisis, leading to a shift away from its traditional mixed economy towards a more market-oriented economy. The government, led by then Finance Minister Manmohan Singh, introduced sweeping economic reforms that included deregulation, reduction of import tariffs, and encouragement of foreign investments. This liberalization aimed to foster economic growth and self-reliance. Similar to the Demokraatit Party's proposed reforms to enhance Greenland's business environment and economic independence, the Indian model highlights the complexities and challenges of transitioning from a state-controlled economy to a market-driven one while maintaining social welfare, a concern also echoed in Greenland's political discourse. 3. South Africa's transition to democracy 1994. The end of apartheid in South Africa marked a significant political and economic transformation. Under the leadership of Nelson Mandela and the African National Congress (ANC), the nation transitioned from a system of racial segregation and oppression to a democratic society. This transition involved not only political reforms but also efforts to address economic disparities and promote inclusive growth. The post-apartheid government faced challenges in balancing economic reforms with social equity, a theme that resonates with Greenland's ambitions for reforms aimed at economic independence while ensuring the welfare of its citizens. The complexities of navigating independence and economic stability in South Africa provide a historical context relevant to Greenland's current political landscape. Future outlook: predictions for the implementation of Demokraatit Party's business-focused reforms by Q2 2025. The Demokraatit Party in Greenland is poised to make significant strides in transforming the island's economy through its business-focused reforms set for implementation by the second quarter of 2025. With a budget allocation of $1.2 billion, the party aims to promote economic independence while balancing the concerns of various stakeholders, especially regarding living standards and social welfare. This outlook will explore four key legislative phases of these reforms and predict future implications for Greenland's economy, society, and geopolitical landscape. Legislative Phase 1: Drafting and proposing legislation. The first phase focuses on drafting legislation that aligns with business interests and economic growth. This process is expected to take shape through collaborative efforts involving industry experts, local businesses, and economic advisors. Future prediction: by mid-2025, the proposed legislation will likely receive broad support from business sectors, especially mining and fisheries, which are pivotal to Greenland's economy. However, resistance may arise from opposition parties and indigenous groups concerned about the environmental implications and potential social impacts of rapid economic changes. Legislative Phase 2: Public consultations. Following the drafting phase, Demokraatit will engage in public consultations, allowing stakeholders to voice their opinions. This phase is crucial for addressing concerns and refining the proposed reforms. Future prediction: consultations will reveal a mixed response from the public. While many businesses will advocate for the reforms, indigenous communities and social welfare advocates may express apprehensions about the potential erosion of traditional lifestyles and social services. A compromise may be required, leading to amendments that incorporate social safeguards into the economic reforms. Legislative Phase 3: Parliamentary debate and amendments. The next phase involves introducing the proposed legislation in the Greenlandic Parliament for debate and necessary amendments. This deliberative process will be essential to shaping the final form of the reforms. Future prediction: the legislative debate will likely be contentious, reflecting the divide between pro-business and social welfare factions. The Demokraatit Party may need to negotiate with opposition parties like Nalarak and Inuit Ataqatigiit, which advocate for more cautious approaches to independence and economic reform. The outcome may result in a reform package that is less aggressive than initially proposed but still significant in promoting economic growth. Legislative Phase 4: Formal approval and integration. The final phase will see the formal approval of the reforms, integrating them into the existing legal framework of Greenland. This step is critical for ensuring that the reforms have the legal backing to foster business development. Future prediction: by late 2025, the reforms are expected to pass with some modifications focusing on sustainable development and social equity. The legislative success will mark a pivotal moment for Greenland, potentially setting a precedent for future governance models that emphasize both economic growth and social responsibility. Economic implications. With a focus on mining, fisheries, and infrastructure, the $1.2 billion investment will have far-reaching economic implications. The budget is likely to catalyze growth in these sectors, attracting both domestic and foreign investment. Future prediction: by 2030, Greenland could emerge as a significant player in the global market for rare earth minerals thanks to increased exploration and extraction activities facilitated by the new reforms. However, this growth will come with challenges, including environmental concerns and the need to balance economic interests with the preservation of indigenous rights and culture. Societal implications. The reforms aim to bolster economic independence while maintaining living standards. However, the transition may lead to societal tensions as traditional ways of life are challenged by new economic realities. Future prediction: by 2030, Greenland may experience a cultural renaissance as indigenous communities assert their rights and influence over resource management. The ongoing dialogue about independence and self-determination will invigorate local identity and pride, potentially leading to a more cohesive society that values both economic development and cultural heritage. Geopolitical implications. The renewed focus on Greenland's resources coincides with heightened global interest, particularly from the United States and China. As the Arctic becomes increasingly strategic due to climate change and resource accessibility, Greenland's reforms may attract foreign investment and involvement. Future prediction: by 2035, Greenland's geopolitical significance will likely increase, positioning the island as a crucial player in Arctic diplomacy and resource management. This could lead to new alliances and partnerships, particularly with countries interested in accessing Greenland's mineral wealth while ensuring that the rights of the indigenous population are respected. Conclusion: the implementation of the Demokraatit Party's business-focused reforms by Q2 2025 represents a critical juncture for Greenland's future. While ambitious, the success of these reforms will depend on navigating the complex interplay of economic growth, social equity, and geopolitical dynamics. By fostering a balanced approach that incorporates the voices of all stakeholders, Greenland can pave the way for a prosperous and sustainable future.